all the bitch-ass motherfuckers that thumbs down on these videos without commenting for whatever reason. I think I know what the reason is. This episode's for you, you bitches. This episode's for you, you motherfuckers. Yeah, that's right. You want a thumbs down, even though I say comment. I tell you to thumbs up, but you don't. You thumbs down and you walk away. It's like punching somebody in the face, just walking away without saying anything. Bitches. It seems like everybody wants to hear a certain kind of history, or particular kind of history that fits the narrative of the popular history around the world. It seems like nowadays. Oh, fuck that. There's so much more to history than your dumb fucking narrow-minded preference of what you think the world should be or what it was, and your cruel fucking fucked up minds. But yeah, the world was cruel, and it still is, because humans are fucked up. History doesn't repeat itself, but human nature does. The history of human nature will always repeat itself because humans are fucked up. And to point out one person over another is fucking bullshit. There'll never be another guy named George Washington showing up that looks just like him and does the same fucking thing. But there'll be similar guys because that's what humans do. Humans want power and control and unity, and that's just what it is. So yeah, this episode's going to be another history of unpopular history that nobody wants to know about or care about. But I'm just going to do it because I think there's more to history than the bullshit that they put through the mainstream. And it's just fun to learn about different cultures and different histories of different people and different times. It's just a fun thing to do. It's nothing that I'm going to hold against anybody or be like, remember what you did 500 years ago, motherfucker? Well, now I'm going to hold it against you. So this episode is a look into the historical writings of a European named Alvise Cadamosto. Again, yeah. Who wrote about what he saw in Africa during the 15th century. And this episode isn't solely about what Africans thought about Europeans when they first saw them, but it's also about Alvise Cadamosto's perspective of what he saw when visiting the western region of Africa. Like I said before, the title doesn't make the whole video. So there's more parts to it. There's more things in the episode to learn about than just the title. I just don't want to be a boring title about some dude that learned some shit because nobody will want to see it. So there's more to the episode than what's in the title. So when this Venetian explorer Alvise Cadamosto was in the country of Budamel in Western Africa in the mid-15th century, before America existed, or before colonization, he went to the local market a few times. And the market was an area in Africa set in the middle of a field to where a lot of people would trade things. And Alvise wrote that he saw the people would trade food things like 2 for 2 or 2 for 3 for something, depending on whatever the bargain was. And he said that they did not have any money, these Africans in that region. So they traded things with each other based on an agreed value. And they were a very poor people who had very little to offer besides sometimes a few strands of cloth or cotton and some food stuff. Very interesting. And when some of these people seen Cadamosto, some of the Africans, when they seen the Cadamosto, they never seen a white person previously. And they were astonished. Groups of people would flock around the European in amazement. And most of the people would grab his clothes and feel the texture. And Cadamosto was dressed in Spanish clothes at the time. He was a Venetian explorer dressed in Spanish clothes. And some of the some Africans would rub the European skin to see if it was paint, if it was painted white, and they were astonished that it was a surprisingly white guy and not black man that was painted white. Cadamosto made a lot of connections with people there who were amazed by the sight of a European. And he took some of them with him to his ship to see and learn about Europe, what Europeans had. And the Europeans got these Africans on the ship, and then they shot some mortars off into the distance, and the Africans were terrified. Well, what the fuck was that, man? He said, yeah, it was just a mortar. He's like, damn. He's a Europeans had translators on the ship so they could talk to these Africans. and tell them about the mortars. And they told the newly arriving Africans that the mortars were so strong that they can kill 100 men at a time. And the Africans were like, fuck that, man. They said, these kind of weapons must have been created by the devil. You crazy motherfuckers are driving this shit around with the big old fucking guns here. The Africans believed that the portholes from the ship were actually eyes, and that it was a demonic device that the devil gave the Europeans in order for them to find their direction around the seas. They mentioned how the Africans would sometimes get lost in various places, and they couldn't understand how the Europeans used compasses. Like, man, it must be the devil's work. You guys must be witches or wizards or something. One of the European sailors, took out a flute and started playing it on the ship. And the Africans were shocked. They're like, what the fuck is that now? They loved the sound of the flute. Can you imagine that? But they didn't understand that it was handmade. It was a handmade device that was played by a human. They believed that it was a living animal that sang beautiful songs. And they're like, man, that's the fucking weirdest thing I ever heard or seen. Because all they had were drums at the time. And a couple of stringed instruments. They believed that it was a living thing that he held up to his mouth and played. And they're like, the fuck, man? It's a cool song. But then the Europeans gave the flute to the African to experiment with it. And they're like, look, man, it's not a living thing. And they loved it. The Africans said that the instrument must have been created by the gods because it was so beautiful. So the Europeans obviously had, in the Africans' perspective, things from the devil, which were the guns, and then things from the gods, which were the flutes, huh? And the Africans of the region loved music. The women loved music so much that they would dance only in the morning and in the night, he wrote. And most of the women that danced were the young women. They liked to dance in the mornings and in the night. This particular tribe had only two instruments. Cadamosto wrote. They had some kind of big drum and then a stringed instrument. They didn't have a flute, and so when they saw that flute, they're like, "Fuck, man, that's crazy." They would dance and they would cook and sit about a bonfire that the Africans made sometimes. And the Africans were amazed by the sight of a candle as well. This group of Africans in the region didn't know of candles prior to the Europeans coming to the village. And the Africans had a way of gathering honey from honeycombs to where they would extract honey and then throw away the comb. And Cadamosto showed them how to save the honeycomb and get the wax from it so they could use it to create a candle. The African tribe loved this new learning. The Africans said that the Europeans knew everything, that they must be wizards that create beautiful music and have directions on their ship and have all the devil fucking guns. The Africans were astonished. The people of this region believed in a lot of magic. They thought that they could cast spells on people. They believed some of them could order snakes to come and attack them. So they were like, hey, man, you better be cool because he's going to send some snakes to your tent at night and kill you. Back in those days, they couldn't Google weather or not magic or gods or anything like that. Or if the gods in the sky were real. The curiosity and the unknown kept these people in wonder and belief in some really wild things. And Christians thought that there was a guy in the sky watching over them and judging them. The Muslims believed there was a bunch of virgin women waiting for them at the afterlife. And this tribe of Africans believed in other things that were based on similar beliefs. The Africans and Europeans were both amazed by each other, at least in these particular cases. Yeah, humans are curious beings. I remember hearing some black women say, like, why is white people always got to touch our hair? Or something like that. Like, people are always, curious about other people that are different than them. And obviously here in history in Africa, in the mid 1400s, like maybe around 1455, somewhere around there, the year 1455, Cadamosto experienced this with the Africans coming up to him and trying to rub the paint off of his skin. And then there was other cases like other Africans had believed that the Europeans were burnt, and they felt bad for them because they thought their skin was burned off. So there's a lot of interesting perspectives and history out there. I just wanted to bring that up because that's a cool little part of history that nobody ever talks about or knows about. I don't know if any of these descendants from this particular tribe, from this particular situation, any of these people have descendants in America today. And if they had ever known, like 570 years ago, their ancestors were astonished and really surprised by white people's skin and European things like guns and flutes and so on and so forth. But anyways, that's it for this podcast, just this episode. So fuck you to the people that want a thumbs down on this. It's just something interesting that I find interesting. If you think it's interesting, then cool. And if you don't, then fucking go away. Anyways, if you like it, thumbs up, share it with your friends, because YouTube doesn't share my stuff. Nobody shares it. None of my platforms share it. I get no shares at all. So this kind of history won't get known unless you share it with people you know, whether you hate them or you like them. Just share it with anybody. And thumbs up and comment. Don't thumbs down and walk away. If you do, you're a bitch. Anyways, that's it. Adios.